Think of an ancient world where no one goes hungry because the land belongs to everyone. Think of an ancient world where children are raised by an entire village, not left to collapse under the weight of two exhausted parents. Think of an ancient world where conflicts are resolved through conversation instead of conquest, where women control their own homes, their own bodies, and their own destinies, not as a radical political statement, but as the completely ordinary, unremarkable way of life. That world wasn't a utopia. It wasn't fiction. It wasn't a dream someone sketched in a philosophy notebook. It existed, and in some corners of the planet, it still does. Here is the startling truth that most history books quietly skip over. For a significant portion of human existence, many societies were not organized around domination, hierarchy, or the rule of the strongest. They were organized around something far more powerful and far more human. They were organized around equality and the mother. And what they built might just be the blueprint we desperately need right now. Part 1. The history they didn't teach you. Most people learn history as a story about kings, conquerors, and the men who built empires. Power, in this telling, has always flowed downward from a single dominant figure, such as a pharaoh, a warlord, a CEO, or a president. This hyper-concentration of power is directly linked to patrilineal systems, where family names and property pass strictly from father to son, turning women and children into transactional assets to be protected or controlled. The result is a sickening level of domestic violence and a profound sense of isolation. When a society treats the earth as something to be mined, conquered, and its citizens as gears in a machine, it creates an environment of perpetual anxiety. It forces individuals to carry the weight of existence completely alone, disconnected from the community and the planet. We have absorbed this so completely that we start to believe it's the only way humans have ever organized themselves. But here's what's incredible. That story is at best incomplete. At worst, that story is a profound erasure of history. Archaeological evidence suggests that many prehistoric societies were matrifocal, centered around maternal symbols, fertility goddesses, and cooperative social structures. Archaeologist Maria Gimbutas spent decades excavating the Neolithic cultures of old Europe, with civilizations dating back 7,000 years or more. What she found was astonishing. She found peaceful, art-rich, goddess-worshipping societies with no evidence of mass warfare, fortified cities, or the dramatic wealth inequalities that define so many later civilizations. She called them cultures of the goddess, and her findings ignited one of the most remarkable and bitterly contested debates in modern archaeology. Some scholars push back hard on Gimbutas. They argue the evidence for prehistoric matriarchies is circumstantial, that the absence of warfare doesn't prove female dominance, and that we shouldn't project modern politics onto ancient pottery and figurines. Those are reasonable objections, serious ones, and they deserve to be heard. But here's the answer to those objections. We don't need to prove prehistoric matriarchies existed to recognize that matrilineal descent and inheritance through the female line and matriarchal societies still exist today. The evidence isn't just in the ancient dirt. It's walking around, living and breathing right now. Part 2. The Mosuo of China. High in the mountains of Yunnan and Sichuan provinces in China, near the banks of Lugu Lake, lives a people called the Mosuo, often called the Kingdom of Women. They number about 40,000, and the way they organize their families, their homes, and their intimate lives is so different from anything most people have ever encountered that travelers who visit often describe the experience as, quite literally, entering another world. The Mosuo practice what anthropologists call walking marriage. There is no formal institution of marriage. Women are the heads of household. Children belong to the mother's family and take the mother's name. Fathers, in the traditional sense, do not exist. A man who fathers a child continues to live in his own mother's home and remains primarily responsible to his sisters and their children. Think about that for a moment. In this system, a man's deepest loyalty is not to a wife he was assigned to or to children he's fathered. His deepest loyalty is to his sisters. His family is comprised of his mother, his sisters, his aunts, his nieces and nephews. The household is female-led, female-owned and matrilineally inherited. Now what's the remarkable, almost bewildering result? Domestic violence among the Mosuo is extraordinarily rare. Because a woman's home is her own, it cannot be taken from her. She does not depend on a man's financial goodwill to survive. If a relationship becomes harmful, the woman ends it, the man leaves, the home stays. Philosopher Simone de Beauvoir once wrote that one is not born a woman but becomes one. This means that femininity is a social construction, a role imposed from outside. The Mosuo flip that script. They don't construct women as dependent. They construct women as the foundation, Part 3. Minangkabau, world's largest matrilineal society. Indonesia's West Sumatra is home to the Minangkabau, comprised of approximately 4 million people, who form the largest matrilineal society on Earth. And this isn't a relic population clinging to ancient customs against modernity. The Minangkabau are Muslims. They have universities, politicians, urban professionals, and smartphones. And they still pass property, clan identity, and familial authority through the mother's line. In Minangkabau culture, the ancestral home, the rumah gadang, or big house, belongs to the women of the clan. Men marry into the family but retain their primary identity within their mother's clan. When a marriage ends, the man returns to his mother's house. The land, the home, the inheritance, all of it flows through women. The Minangkabau's philosophy, Adat, teaches that power should be like water, soft, flexible, and nourishing. They practice consensus governance, where decisions are made through communal councils rather than top-down authority. What does this produce? According to researchers who've studied the Minangkabau extensively, it produces something that is, by any measure, extraordinary. Near-absent rates of homelessness among women and children, strong communal investment in family welfare, and a cultural emphasis on musyawarah, deliberation, consensus, and conversation, rather than unilateral authority. The Minangkabau have a saying, anak dipangku kemanakan dibimbing, which means the child is carried on the lap, but the nephew is guided. It emphasizes the central role of the mamak, the mother's brother, who is responsible for his sister's children. It is a system of gonggam bontuak, or holding together, where women are the symbolic owners of wealth and men are its administrators, ensuring balance and collaboration. It's not a perfect society. No society is, but the numbers don't lie. When women cannot be economically dispossessed, they aren't. And when they aren't, children are more stable, communities are more cohesive, and the desperate, grinding poverty that so often follows divorce or abandonment in patriarchal systems simply doesn't materialize. Part 4. Haudenosaunee, or Democracy's Hidden Mothers. Here is something that will likely leave you genuinely stunned. The democratic principles embedded in the United States Constitution, separation of powers, checks and balances, and federalism, were significantly influenced by the governance model of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, also known as the Iroquois indigenous peoples, and the Haudenosaunee were matrilineal. The clan mothers, the senior women of each clan, held the power to appoint, advise, and remove male chiefs. They weren't elected representatives in the Western sense. They were something more profound. They were the permanent intergenerational stewards of communal decision-making. A chief who acted against the interests of his community could be dehorned, stripped of his title, by the clan mothers. Benjamin Franklin wrote admiringly of the Iroquois system. The 1744 Treaty of Lancaster saw Iroquois leader Canasatego directly urge the American colonies to unite under a confederacy similar to theirs. Historians like Donald Grinder and Bruce Johansen have documented this influence in remarkable detail. Now, here's the burning irony. The founders took the governance model, but they left behind the women who made it work. Here's some little-known history. Early suffragists like Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Matilda Joslyn Gage were directly inspired by Haudenosaunee women. They saw a functioning society where women had political authority, economic autonomy, and social respect. They realized patriarchy wasn't inevitable. It was a choice, and choices can be unmade. Part 5. Why this matters to you. If you grew up in a home where you didn't feel safe, where love was conditional, where authority was arbitrary, where someone's rage could fill a room without warning, then this history might land differently than it does for someone who grew up feeling secure. The systems that matriarchal and matrilineal societies built were deeply psychological. They were designed to distribute safety. They were designed to make sure no single person held all the power over another person's survival. They were designed to ensure that a child would be held by many hands, not left dangling from one. Shared childcare, what anthropologists call alloparenting or all-mothering, wasn't just practical as it was protective. When a child has multiple adults invested in their well-being, the terrifying vulnerability of depending entirely on one or two people diminishes. Trauma researchers like Bessel van der Kolk have documented what happens when that web of support fails. The nervous system dysregulation, the chronic anxiety and the hypervigilance follows a child through their entire life. The societies we've been examining didn't just stumble onto efficient resource distribution. They stumbled onto something that modern psychology is only now beginning to fully understand, which is that human beings are not built for individualism and isolation. We are built for community. Aristotle wrote that man is by nature a political animal, meaning we are creatures who require the polis, the community, to fully become ourselves. But the matrilineal societies understood something Aristotle didn't fully account for, which is that the community needs to be structured in a way that distributes power, or it becomes just another arena for domination. Part 6. The Earth as Mother. There's a thread that runs through every matriarchal and matrilineal tradition studied by anthropologists, and that is a deep, structural reverence for the Earth as a living and nurturing presence. The Earth is not a resource to be extracted and not as property to be owned. It is a mother. The Haudenosaunee concept of the seventh generation principle holds that every decision made by the council should consider its impact 7 generations into the future. 7 generations. That's roughly 175 years. Imagine if any contemporary government operated with that time frame in mind. Imagine if a corporation's board of directors asked, before approving a pipeline or a clear cut of a forest or a chemical dump, what will this look like in 175 years? The ecological devastation we are currently living through, including the burning, the flooding and the species collapse, is not an accident. It is the logical end product of a worldview that treats the Earth as property rather than kin. In the matriarchal traditions, they saw the Earth as part of their spiritual family. When land belongs to the clan rather than the individual, there is no incentive to extract it into ruin. When the Earth is understood as a mother who is literally sacred and literally alive, then desecrating it becomes not just impractical but morally inconceivable. Part 7. The Skeptics. It is completely natural to feel a sense of skepticism when hearing about these societies. A common objection is that these structures simply reverse the hierarchy, turning men into second-class citizens and replacing patriarchy with an equally oppressive matriarchy. People assume that if women hold the wealth and line of descent, men must be subjugated. But this assumption is a product of our own conditioning. It represents a total failure to understand what a true matriarchy is. As the renowned matriarchal scholar Heide Gottner Abendroth points out, matriarchies are not patriarchies in reverse. They are fundamentally non-hierarchical. In these cultures, men are not oppressed. They hold vital, highly respected roles as maternal uncles, council members, and cultural protectors. The goal is never dominance, it is balance. Another frequent objection is the scale argument. Skeptics claim that while resource pooling, communal food security, and regenerative environmental practices work beautifully in small, isolated clans, they are completely unimaginable for a globalized world of billions. Yet this objection ignores the structural essence of these systems. The Haudenosaunee Confederacy successfully united completely distinct nations across vast territories using a horizontal, federalized model of consensus. The core principles, such as treating land and vital resources as a shared trust rather than individual, exploitative property, can easily be scaled through modern ecological stewardship laws and cooperative economic frameworks. The obstacle is not a lack of logistics. It is a lack of collective consciousness and will. Part 8. What we can do. None of what is being discussed here is a call to dismantle everything and return to some romanticized past. It is a call to recognize that the way things currently are is not the way things have always been. And that is one of the most liberating realizations a human being can have. If you've ever looked at the world and felt a deep, burning sense that something is fundamentally wrong, that the systems around you are grinding people into dust, that the loneliness and the inequality and the environmental destruction can't possibly be inevitable, then you are right. These systems are not inevitable as they are choices. The Mosuo woman who owns her home didn't earn that right through protest. She inherited it because her society decided long ago that a home is the foundation of a life, and a woman's life should have a foundation. The clan mother who removed a chief didn't do it through revolution. She did it because her society built accountability into the structure of power from the beginning. The Minangkabau child who will never be homeless because of divorce didn't win a legal battle. They were simply born into a system that considered their welfare non-negotiable. These are not miracles, they are designs, and if human beings designed them once, then human beings can design them again. As the philosopher Gloria Jean Watkins, aka Bell Hooks, wrote, "The first act of violence that patriarchy demands of males is not violence toward women. It is that they engage in acts of psychic self-mutilation, that they kill off the emotional parts of themselves." The matriarchal societies we've looked at didn't just protect women, they protected everyone, including men, from that mutilation. These matriarchal societies created systems where cooperation was more valuable than domination, and where the measure of a man was not how much he controlled, but how well he delivered for the people he loved. Part 9. The blueprint is there waiting. The world is burning. The anxiety, the inequality, the loneliness, and the sense that the systems we've inherited are failing us. These are not personal failures. They are systemic ones. And somewhere in the mountains of Yunnan, in the highlands of West Sumatra, in the oral traditions of the Haudenosaunee, and in the excavated clay of the Neolithic culture's old Europe, there are blueprints. These blueprints are imperfect and contextual, belonging to specific peoples and specific moments in history, but they are real. These societies show that present-day reality doesn't have to be hierarchical. Existence doesn't have to be competitive. Consciousness doesn't have to be shaped by fear. Meaning doesn't have to be found in domination. The profound truth is this: human beings have known how to build society differently. They have done it. Some of them are still doing it. The question isn't whether a better world is possible. The question is whether we have the courage to look at the evidence, really look at it, and let it change us. Because the mother has always known what the conqueror forgot. The mother knows that the only thing worth building is something that lasts, something that holds, and something that the seventh generation will still be able to live inside. The blueprint is there. The only question left is who will pick it up and build with it.